just at the end of a very long afternoon at the Undercover Policing Inquiry. We've been listening to the live evidence of HN90. I'm joined with Eveline Lubbers from the Undercover Research Group. Eveline, what do you make of the evidence we heard this afternoon?
Well, what can I say? It was a really long and boring day. Yeah, particularly, but words don't come out anymore because it's so late. You're looking a bit tired, Mr. Mitting.
Yes.
We all are, aren't we? Yeah, we have to do that, but it's long days, isn't it? So, yeah.
So when you finished flirting with the judge, what do you think of the day's hearing?
Well, people pass by and you say goodbye. Well, as we said, it was a very long day, and it was specifically tedious because the what's it called, the barrister who asked the questions had like really drawn out way to ask his questions, and then wait a bit, but then on the other hand he wasn't paying attention to the answers. He didn't ask any follow-up questions. He was just ticking off his boxes and then going through his papers.
I mean, I would say I get the impression that very well might be on purpose. There's a constant sort of desire to keep a very narrow focus on what all the questions that are being given are about. We've seen it on previous questioning of some of the undercover officers. Though certainly the style of this particular barrister was very much not to follow up anything. I did think, very little. I would say that for me the thing which really stood out was the utterly unrepentant nature of HN90. Previous undercover officers have given more in terms of, in hindsight, in retrospect, given what we know now, whereas HN90 really didn't do that. He still said that despite the fact that some organisations, though subversive in intent, did not have the ability to be subversive, he still considered them subversive and still thought it was necessary to infiltrate them to find out if they had the intent or if they had the ability or not, and even if they didn't have the ability, it would still be required to keep an officer undercover within those groups. This is something which other undercover officers, possibly because they've been pushed on it more, then turned around and gone, well, yes, now we know what we know now, but back then it was very different, and the hindsight's a wonderful thing. But even in hindsight, he didn't think it was a bad thing to do a lot of those infiltrations, or all of the infiltrations. He thought they were all fully justified. He didn't give up anything on that at all.
No, that's true, but I do think you are too positive about other undercovers that we have heard. I don't think they were not even in retrospect, really sorry about or sort of reflecting. But not even reflecting on what they had done. But this one in particular was like, he was really sort of, but that was just what we were told to do. We had to collect intelligence, and whether it was about sexuality or being homosexual or moving house or whatever, it could always be of interest to have on file. And that I think this was the first time that was made sort of, it could always be of interest for later, maybe to, if we want to recruit someone as an informer, maybe, it had sort of the air of blacklisting over it as well. It's good to have the information because you never know what you can use it for, and that was I think very sort of one of the new things that were, or new not, but sort of explicitly confirmed today.
That was something which we've long suspected and assumed was the case, that this information was being used to recruit informers. But he was very explicit about that. He mentioned it a couple of times, and why this was a big part of their job. A big part of their job was identifying possible informers and also identifying people who wouldn't be useful informers. He talks again, as we've heard from a number of undercover officers, about the negative as well as the positive of forms of reporting. It's to rule people out as well as to rule them in, which I think is particularly bullshit line, but yeah. I realise how we're running really late. Everybody around us is like turning off lights and things. So, is there anything else you want to add before we get out of here?
Yeah, there's one more thing that we had a undercover research group conversation with involved Donald Driscoll as well, and he kind of said that it dawned to him that because they all say they did not have any specific instruction on what the intelligence was that they had to collect, so like we just said, anything was of interest, one way or the other, negative or positive. But the fact that they did not need specific instruction means that the special branch experience was enough. So it tells you something in hindsight about how the whole of special branch operates. The fact that they, for this very specific unit, they did not need any further sort of qualifications or instruction about how, or guidance on how to work or no. It tells you that being a special branch officer was enough. So the entirety of special branch works that way. So it is what we see here is sort of shining a light on that very specific Metropolitan Police culture of sexism and racism and everything that comes out today. Report on how women and girls are being treated. It has to do with that entire culture of sexism and racism that turns out to be so hard to fight in the Metropolitan Police.
I mean, it's so hard to fight because they have no desire to change it themselves. I think that's the key point. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think this is something which is really becoming clear to those of us who are following the inquiry closely, that it's not about the SDS specifically. It's all a special branch. We've heard a number of undercover officers talk about being in the SDS as the highest level of being a special branch officer. They were the best of them. What do the rest of them are like? And particularly when we talk about the chilling effect that the role of the SDS had on democracy, that's an effect that special branch was having on democracy the whole time on a greater level. I hope that one day we're coming to a public inquiry into the role of special branch more generally, because I think that we're not going to get to anything until we get to that, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a whole bunch of things I want to say about that, but I just can't think because it's been such a long day and we've been in this building all day. Same here. Anything else before I talk about tomorrow?
Not really.
Okay, so just quickly, tomorrow we're going to hear from HN56. Now, HN56 is another unique one for this set of hearings. Used the cover name Alan Nick Nicholson. He was deployed into the British National Party, a far-right group. The first time we were hearing from an undercover officer was infiltrating the far-right. He was only there for a short period of time, between 90 and 91. So, I mean, you would assume that this would be a shorter day tomorrow. But yeah, somewhat different. Alan Nick Nicholson, that suggests that his first name wasn't Alan. And like all the other officers who used the first name of his first name was probably Nick, and he thought Nicholson as a surname meant that he could answer to something. Anyway, I'll be covering that as usual. I'll do a Twitter Spaces again this evening, God knows what time. Thanks for following. See you all tomorrow. Cheers.